That's very right. Raise your hand if you love your children. Good. I can't see hands, but. Now raise your hand if you're a good parent. A lot of adults become parents thinking their sole purpose in life is to write their child's future, when it should really be how they're going to get them prepared for that future, making sure they go out into the world as ready as possible. The point of being a child isn't to have a step-by-step plan on how to become successful as soon as you leave off for college. The plan is to go out being happy, determined, and curious. And oftentimes, parent making that mistake ends up in overprotectiveness. And a parent's overprotectiveness on a child's physical and mental health is greatly overlooked and should be one of the first thoughts when trying to figure out what is wrong with that child's development. Now, don't get me wrong, there are benefits to overprotectiveness, like the exemption from harm or risk, but the cons outweigh the pros by quite a bit. Overprotective parents. In other words, helicopter parents. We all know what those are. Those parents who hover over you, watching your every move, and making sure to step in as soon as you get into the slightest risk. Granted, it's a parent's responsibility to make sure their child doesn't get themselves in the life sentence supermax, or worse, get themselves killed. But I want to bring an example to the table here. I'm going to get that look from most of you, but curfews. Why? Does the world become cruel after 9? Now, I never had a curfew. I know, lucky me. But I don't think that's luck. I think that's common sense and trust. Let your child learn the responsibilities of time management and risk on their own. Trust them. When a kid starts going out into the world, they usually know how to make a decision and have been mostly raised. Now, you're the parent. So if you trust that you did a good job as a parent, you should have no doubt that your kid is going to refuse an old stranger saying he has candy in his van. Now, I'm not asking every parent here to tell their kids to stay up as late as possible or to head to the most dangerous neighborhood. But I am suggesting encouraging a good time to be home at and letting your kid take it on from there. Let's face it, they're probably at their friend's house. They're not wandering the streets with a spray can in their hands. And if they are, let them learn. If they get caught, let them have that conversation with a police officer. They're probably not going to get like a ticket or arrested. It can be really intimidating but educational to have a talk with a police officer. I would know. Okay, I want to bring another example. Life 360. If you don't know what it is, I'm proud. Really, you did a good job. It's basically an app that lets you see someone's location at all times, where they've been, where they're going, what speed they're going at. You can retrace their steps from the last couple of days. Now, having your child's location for safety is one thing, but having it to trace them 24/7 because you're constantly worried about them for no specific reason is another. I don't think any child likes getting that call from their parents asking why they stepped into a gas station 3.5 seconds ago. Definition of a helicopter parent. Using satellite imaging to trace exactly where they are and possibly even with 911 on speed dial. Becoming a parent doesn't mean replacing your entire lifestyle and dedicating it strictly to your child. And no offense here, but don't you have something else to do with all those hours that you spend tracking them and worrying about them? This may not be a great example, but back in the Egyptian days, people were trusted to take control of an entire empire by the age of 10 to 11. Now, I'm not saying this is the way to go. Of course it isn't, but most 17-year-olds these days aren't even trusted to do their own homework. What truly are the consequences of overprotectiveness? Well, for starters, depression. Depression can come from many things, but when it comes to overprotective parenting, it mainly comes from worry and anxiety. Additional side effects like lack of coping skills, phobia, fear of failing, being indecisive, becoming a bullying target are all major side effects. Now, if you ask me, those are terrible characteristics to have when going out into the world. Now, parents. I don't know what it's like to be a parent, thankfully. But what I do know is that it can't be easy adding useless stress to your daily routine. If I've learned anything from my parents is that any amount of stress you can remove from your life can make a great difference. It's kind of like deleting that one video that you have in your camera roll. You've never actually looked at it. It's a couple minutes long, and as soon as you delete it, you end up with 10 gigabytes of space that you can finally use for something useful. Additionally, and I think I speak for most kids here, when our parents When our parents set a rule that we deem to be dumb or useless, we will most of the time try to find a way around it. And a lot of the time, that'll end up in more dangerous situations. One example for me was when I was 10 years old. My parents got me my first iPad. I remember that day. I was very happy. We went to the App Store, and I paid for half, they paid for half. As we were leaving the store, an employee comes back and stops us, saying he had forgot to mention one brand new feature: time limit. Just by the sound of it, I wanted to return the iPad. He then went on explaining all the beautiful things you can do with it, limiting searches, app downloads, and of course, screen time. Still remember my parents' face that night, knowing they'd be able to keep me healthy by putting on screen time. So you can imagine my excitement mid-game of Fortnite Battle Royale, about to get the win, when that beautiful magical screen appears, saying I'd reached my limit for the day. Of course, I used my one more minute, hoping I'd be able to win the game, but I'd never be able to. But when that screen appears again, pure anger. So what did I do? Simple. I tried to find any way possible to get that code. From screen recording my screen when my parents did the code, all the way to cleaning my screen so clean that I'd be able to retrace my parents' fingerprints and try every combination. I became an entire detective just to get what I wanted. And you might think I didn't do anything dangerous in this situation, and I didn't. But in a lot of other situations, things could get dangerous. Imagine if your kid was too scared to go home because it's after curfew and had no place to stay at night, just because they're too scared of the consequences. Could be pretty bad. And for those wondering, I did manage to get the code a couple times, but my parents changed it again. Now, one reason people, and more specifically parents, would state to justify overprotectiveness is that parenting has become harder than it used to be. That's my personal opinion on this, and I strongly disagree. Yes, every new generation faces with new problems and new developments, but not necessarily more than others. Our generation has to deal with social media and the introduction of the phones at such an early age, but previous generations had to deal with the introduction of TV shows or video games. All this to say, you can't look back at how you were raised and copy and paste. You're going to have to learn new things and new skills. Of course, there will be similarities along the way that you can pick up from, but you're going to have to adapt. So what are some solutions? Well, for starters, be open to conversation. Jumping to conclusions can be one of the worst things. Many kids, or teenagers, have the ability to talk about their feelings. So have that conversation. It's important to get both sides of the story. And of course, be open to negotiation. If the verdict is that you are overprotective, then ask what you can do better and state the reasons for the things you can't change. I'm 17 now. I'm a senior in high school. And until a couple months ago, I still had time limit on my phone. And I learned that talking isn't going to start itself. It's a commitment, a step you have to take. So no matter how many times I tried to reason with my parents in the past to get screen time off, I'd never be able to get it because I only wanted what I wanted and never actually heard my parents out. So a couple months ago when I did have that conversation with parents, which actually came up when I was researching for this talk, I listened to my parents and they listened to me. I not only found a way to get what I wanted, but also found a way to provide what they wanted. What did they want? They wanted me to be able to keep a healthy life while not having screen time, meaning going out, being happy, getting good grades, and not replacing my homework with Instagram or Snapchat. And now that I look back at it, I don't spend much more time on my phone than I used to when I did have time limit. But the major difference is that I don't go through those 10 minutes of rage every time I get screen time, asking myself why my parents don't love me, if they'll ever understand, and if things will ever change until I'm 18. And let me tell you something. It was a learning curve, a big learning curve, because I did spend a lot of time on my phone at first. But if I was to go out into college with no experience on time management, it'd be pretty bad. So next time you're parenting, which I guess is pretty much all the time, take a second to reflect on what you're doing and try to think of what you can do better. Think about it this way. There is always something to improve. And this goes for kids too. To a lot of people, becoming a parent is a life's goal, and it's a unique experience. So why not going out, enjoying it as most as possible, and do the right thing? Thank you.